In the 18th century, the vast ocean was traversed by ships that were, in essence, floating prisons, not just for convicts, but for the entire crew. The chief executioner on board was scurvy, which decimated sailors by the thousands. James Lind was one of those who witnessed this horror daily. A naval surgeon, weary of helplessness, he refused to wait for a miracle. In 1747, aboard HMS Salisbury, Lind conducted an unprecedented experiment. He took 12 sailors suffering from scurvy and divided them into 6 pairs. Each pair received a different remedy: cider, an elixir, vinegar, seawater, sulfuric acid, and finally, citrus fruits, oranges, and lemons. The results were astonishing. Only those who consumed citrus fruits quickly recovered, while the others remained ill or died. This was no conjecture or accident. It was humanity's first controlled clinical experiment. Lind demonstrated to the world that to understand what works, one must not guess, but systematically test and compare. His method, the method of scientific inquiry, changed medicine forever, saving millions of lives. He became the father of evidence-based medicine. However, a crucial error is often made when recounting scientific discoveries. We love stories of brilliant insights, of epiphanies descending from the heavens, of solitary geniuses changing the world with a snap of their fingers. This is a myth, beautiful, convenient, and utterly false. Science is not a series of magical sparks. It is painstaking labor. It is a method. It is constant verification and re-verification. It is skepticism elevated to a principle. It is a slow but relentless march towards truth, step by step. For centuries, medicine remained enslaved by dogma. Its foundation was not observation and experimentation, but ancient treatises and authority. Galen, who lived a millennium and a half earlier, was still an infallible oracle. His theories of the 4 humors, blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile, dictated every medical decision. Illness was considered a result of an imbalance of these fluids, and treatment involved their forced correction. Almost every ailment demanded bloodletting. Leeches and incisions caused blood to flow like a river. Patients were weakened with emetics and purgatives, believed to cleanse the body, but in reality, these practices exhausted them and destroyed their resistance. Surgery was a battlefield. Open wounds were cauterized with hot irons or doused with boiling oil, torture, not treatment. Post-operative infection was an inevitable companion, and pus was considered laudable, a sign of recovery, when in fact it was a harbinger of agonizing death. Pain was ubiquitous, death commonplace. Doctors adorned in velvet and wigs often only exacerbated suffering. They acted according to books written centuries ago, not by what they saw with their own eyes. This was a world where healing was the lot of a few, and suffering was the norm. A world where human life hung by a thread, and science, as we know it, had not yet been born. Into this world, steeped in ignorance and suffering, came James Lind. Born in Edinburgh, Scotland in 1717, he was young yet insightful. He trained as a surgeon and soon entered naval service, a harsh teacher. Lind spent many years working in ship sick bays and port hospitals. He saw not only the boundless expanse of the ocean, but also the bottomless depths of human despair. Every day he encountered what others considered normal: beds piled with groaning bodies, air thick with the smell of pus and death, doctors confidently prescribing bloodletting and emetics. They acted by the rules, by ancient texts. But Lind saw differently. He saw blood flowing like a river, yet pain persisted. He saw vomiting exhaust the body, yet illness only strengthened. He watched patients, treated according to all canons, waste away before his eyes. This was not merely observation, it was a continuous, agonizing lesson. He saw that Galen's theories, revered for centuries, saved no one. That every incision, every leech, every purgative only hastened the end. This daily routine of death did not lead him to despair, but to a burning question: why? Why did these methods, sanctioned by centuries, not work? Lind was not a rebel by nature. He was a pragmatist, a man who sought solutions, and his experience showed him that what was considered truth was a lie. He did not believe in chance. He believed in cause and effect. He saw how doctrines killed, and this realization compelled him to seek another path, a path based not on faith, but on what he saw with his own eyes, on facts, on real results. This was the beginning of his personal war against dogma, a war for medicine founded on truth. He didn't just observe the agony, he sought a way out. The daily routine of death, the helplessness of doctors blindly following ancient dogmas, all cried out for change. Lind saw thousands of sailors dying from scurvy, slowly and agonizingly. Their gums rotted, teeth fell out, joints swelled, and bodies became covered in black spots. Neither bloodletting nor emetics helped. They only hastened the end. This daily recurring scene left him no choice. He had to act. He had to test himself. In 1747, aboard the warship HMS Salisbury, Lind took an unprecedented step. He conceived an experiment, not just an observation, but a strictly controlled trial. He selected 12 sailors, all in the advanced stages of scurvy, emaciated, barely alive. They became participants in humanity's first clinical trial. Lind divided them into 6 pairs. Each pair received their daily rations, plus one of the supposed remedies for scurvy. To one pair he gave half a liter of cider. To another, 25 drops of elixir of vitriol 3 times a day. A third pair drank vinegar. A fourth received seawater. A fifth received a mixture of myrrh, garlic, and horseradish. The 6th pair, the smallest, received only 2 oranges and 1 lemon per day. Every morning for 2 weeks, Lind visited his patients. He recorded every detail. He measured pulses. He examined ulcers on their gums. He checked the condition of their skin. He noted their appetite, mood, and strength. This was meticulous, methodical work. He was not looking for an instant miracle. He was looking for a pattern. And the pattern emerged incredibly quickly. By the 6th day, the ulcers of the 2 sailors in the citrus pair began to heal. Their gums stopped bleeding. Their eyes cleared. They were able to get out of bed. Within a week, one of them returned to duty. The second was almost well. He was amazed, but not surprised. The result was obvious. Meanwhile, the condition of the other sailors either remained unchanged or slowly but surely worsened. Cider, vinegar, elixirs, nothing helped. Most continued to suffer. Some died. The difference was so striking, so undeniable, that it could not be ignored. Just 12 people, and 1 ship. But this was not just a medical experiment. It was the birth of a new era in medicine. An era where healing was based not on beliefs, but on facts. Not on authority, but on verification. Lind, unknowingly, laid the foundation for all modern evidence-based medicine. He showed that truth does not descend from the heavens. It is obtained through labor. It is tested, step by step. The truth was found. But finding it was only half the battle. The real struggle began now, the battle for its acceptance. James Lind did not stop at one, albeit groundbreaking, experiment. His mind worked like a machine, constantly seeking patterns, testing hypotheses. He understood, one experiment, no matter how convincing, would not instantly change centuries, old habits, and entrenched dogmas. This required not only facts, but also systematization and persistence. In 1753, Lind published his work, simply and clearly titled, A Treatise of the Scurvy. This was not just a book, but a meticulous report of his research. He described his famous experiment on the Salisbury in detail, omitting no detail, no observation. But he did not stop there. Lind collected and analyzed all available data on scurvy, historical records, testimonies of other doctors, his own observations during years of naval service. He investigated various theories about the causes of the disease, discarding those that did not stand up to factual scrutiny. This was an example of empirical thinking, not building castles in the air, but working with what could be seen, measured, verified. Lind paid particular attention to practical recommendations. He didn't just state the benefits of citrus fruits, he developed specific instructions for their storage and use during long sea voyages. He proposed using lemon juice mixed with sugar as a concentrated and stable product. This was his technology of influence, not just knowledge, but a ready-made solution. It is also important that Lind wrote in English, not Latin, as was customary in academic circles. He wanted his ideas to be accessible not only to scientists, but also to ordinary doctors, ship captains, those who could apply them in practice. However, the path to change proved long and arduous. The Admiralty, despite the obvious results, was slow to implement Lynd's recommendations universally. The cost of citrus fruits, the difficulties of purchasing and storing them on a massive scale, all created bureaucratic obstacles. Lynd did not back down. He saw this not as a personal error, but as systemic resistance. He continued his work, expanding his research. His subsequent works, an essay on the most effectual means of preserving the health of seamen in the Royal Navy, 1757, and an essay on diseases incidental to Europeans in hot climates, 1768, demonstrated his ability to learn and adapt. He realized that the fight against scurvy was only part of the broader problem of sailors' health. He began to study other aspects: ship ventilation, hygiene, drinking water quality, clothing, and overall diet. Lynd understood that every detail mattered. He proposed specific methods for water purification, improving sanitary conditions, and creating shipboard baths. He didn't just treat diseases, he sought to prevent them. His persistence, his methodical approach, his constant search for practical solutions based on facts, not conjecture. This is what distinguished Lynd. He did not wait for epiphanies, he worked. He didn't just discover a cure for scurvy, he showed how to think about medicine, how to develop it, step by step, even when the world around resisted change. But the resistance was colossal. The medical community, which had built its practice on Galen's works for decades, was not going to give up easily. For them, Lynd's report was not a scientific discovery. It was a challenge, a personal insult. His 12 sailors? Too few. The results? A coincidence. Citrus fruits? An expensive whim, not a serious medicine. Doctors in velvet coats, accustomed to bloodletting and leeches, dismissively waved him off. They saw his empirical approach as a threat to their established order, a threat to their authority. If Lynd was right, then all their knowledge was false, their methods murderous. To admit such a thing was unthinkable. Conservative professors from prestigious universities, members of the Royal College of Physicians, actively opposed his ideas. They called his methods unorthodox and his conclusions hasty. Some asserted that scurvy was divine punishment and no oranges could help. Their voices were loud, their influence enormous. They didn't just ignore Lynd, they tried to discredit him, to convince the Admiralty that his recommendations were nothing more than eccentricities. However, Lynd also had influential patrons. Lord Anson, one of the most respected admirals of his time, had personally faced the horrors of scurvy, losing hundreds of men to the disease during his circumnavigation. He understood that Lynd spoke the truth. He believed him, not out of blind trust, but because Lynd's words were confirmed by real, tangible results. Anson used his influence to support Lynd, lobbying for his ideas in higher circles, though he too met resistance. Other captains, such as the future legendary James Cook, also began to apply Lynd's recommendations on their ships. Cook, known for his care for his crew, did not wait for official orders. He saw that citrus fruits worked. He saw his sailors remain healthy while people on other ships died by the thousands. He became living proof of Lynd's correctness, transforming his ships into floating laboratories, demonstrating daily that scurvy prevention was possible. But even with the support of such figures, the bureaucratic machine moved incredibly slowly. It took decades for Lynd's recommendations to become mandatory for the entire British fleet, almost half a century. Almost half a century for a truth, proven by one man on one ship, to finally break through the thick layers of ignorance, inertia, and personal interests. This was not just a battle for scientific recognition, it was a battle for lives. And this battle was won. Not immediately, not easily, but won. In 1795, a year after James Lynd's death, the British Admiralty made a historic and mandatory decision. Every ship of the Royal Navy was ordered to carry a supply of lemon juice, and its daily issuance became the norm. Almost half a century after the first experiment on the Salisbury, the truth Lynd championed finally triumphed. His name was not forgotten. His work became law. The result was astonishing. In 2 years, From 1795 to 1797, the number of scurvy cases in the British fleet decreased by 93%. 93%. The disease that had decimated sailors for centuries, claiming hundreds of thousands of lives, now retreated. It ceased to be a scourge that turned every long voyage into a deadly lottery, no longer a death sentence written on every sailor's face. Ships, once floating hospitals where half the crew lay in agony, were transformed into effective fighting units. Crews, once exhausted and sick, became strong and healthy. They could remain at sea for months, maintaining full combat readiness. This gave the Royal Navy unprecedented strategic superiority. The ability to blockade enemy ports, undertake long voyages, and conduct protracted campaigns all became possible thanks to the health of the people. This advantage changed the course of history. James Lind did not live to see this triumph. He died without witnessing the fruits of his struggle. But his victory was absolute, not through recognition in grand halls, but through saved lives, through ships that now returned to port with living crews, not with cargo holds full of the dead. He didn't just find a cure, he gave the world something greater. He showed how to distinguish truth from error, how to trust facts, not authority, how to build medicine on a foundation of evidence. And this method, once tested on 12 sailors, became a universal key to progress. It opened the door to a new era, an era where science, not superstition, saves lives, an era where evidence is more important than dogma, the era in which we live today. From the day the Admiralty's order became law, life on ships changed irrevocably. From then on, every sailor in the Royal Navy, regardless of rank or position, received their daily portion of lemon juice. This was not just a recommendation, it was a mandatory protocol. Imagine, every morning, on deck, instead of the usual rituals of bloodletting or taking emetics, sailors were given a small but life-saving dose. Often, it was 1 ounce of concentrated lemon juice mixed with sugar to improve the taste and extend shelf life. This simple yet revolutionary measure, implemented at Lind's insistence, changed the very essence of shipboard medicine. Now, doctors did not wait for disease to strike the crew, they acted proactively. Prevention became the priority. This was a paradigm shift, from treating existing ailments to active prophylaxis. Scurvy, once an inevitable companion of long voyages, was now rarely encountered. Ships embarking on circumnavigations returned not with half-dead crews, but with living, capable teams. This success, tangible and undeniable, earned British sailors the nickname limeys, from lime, referring to the citrus fruits they now regularly consumed. It was more than just a nickname. It was a symbol of a new era in naval affairs. Healthy and strong crews could spend months, even years at sea, maintaining full combat readiness. This gave the British Empire an undeniable advantage in naval battles and the exploration of new lands. Wars were won not only on the battlefield, but also in ships' sick bays, where hygiene now reigned instead of despair. But Lind's true triumph lay not only in the victory over scurvy, it lay in the establishment of a method. His experiment on the Salisbury became the gold standard for future medical research. It showed that to find the truth, one must not believe, but test. Not guess, but compare, systematically, scrupulously. This approach, based on observation, hypothesis, and controlled experiment, permeated all areas of medicine. It became the foundation of evidence-based medicine, which we use today. Doctors ceased to be mere custodians of ancient knowledge. They became researchers, scientists. They began to ask questions. Does this work? How can it be proven? Lind's discovery changed not only the protocols for treating scurvy, it changed the very philosophy of medicine. From an art based on tradition and authority, it transformed into a science based on data and facts. This was the path that led to the discovery of vaccines, antibiotics, and sterilization. Every breakthrough in modern medicine, from open heart surgery to cancer treatment, owes something, in one way or another, to that simple yet brilliant experiment conducted aboard an old warship. Lind didn't just save millions of lives, he gave humanity a tool to save even more lives. He taught us how to find answers. And that became his true, immortal legacy. James Lind was not a hero of grand halls. He did not seek instant glory. His path was one of painstaking work, methodical searching, and persistence in the face of centuries-old dogmas. He did not live to see the full triumph of his ideas, dying a year before his recommendations became law for the entire British fleet. But therein lies the paradox of his immortal legacy. A man whose name is not always heard alongside great pioneers, he orchestrated a quiet revolution. He showed that truth does not descend from the heavens by revelation of authorities. It is obtained in practice. It is tested, compared, measured. His humble experiment on 12 sailors became the seed from which all modern medicine grew. He taught the world to ask the ultimate question, does it work? And to demand proof. This was not just a method for treating disease, it was a method for